Today is Monday, October 6th. We'll update you on more attacks in the Middle East, despite new hope for a Gaza ceasefire, and what's expected from the high-level negotiations today. Also, back in the U.S., we'll tell you where the government shutdown stands and how the Trump administration is trying new tactics to militarize some cities. Plus, what we know about a popular NFL analyst who was stabbed, then arrested. Which nostalgic sweepstakes from a decade ago is making a comeback after a multi-million-dollar scandal, and how to see this year's first supermoon in the sky tonight. Those stories and even more news to know coming up. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. Today, top officials from the U.S., Hamas, Israel, and other Middle Eastern countries are all meeting in Egypt. The highly anticipated talks could pave the way for a ceasefire in Gaza, since they're talking about some crucial points in the offer on the table now. For example, Israel's military withdrawal lines in Gaza and the names of Palestinian prisoners who will be released in exchange for the remaining Israeli hostages. But U.S. officials say even if today's talks go well, they won't immediately end the war. On Friday, Hamas said it had broadly accepted President Trump's 20-point peace plan to end the war and rebuild Gaza. But the terror group is divided over accepting the term of laying down all arms and the conditions under which it would free hostages. Now, there is no official deadline for the talks, but President Trump wrote on Truth Social yesterday, quote, "Time is of the essence or massive bloodshed will follow." And Israel says it at least wants to get the hostages and prisoner swap done as soon as this week. Meanwhile, the attacks in Gaza have continued, even though President Trump told Israel to stop bombing the territory immediately. Last week, a United Nations agency said on average 100 people are killed in Gaza every day, including dozens just yesterday. Hundreds of thousands of people across several European cities marched yesterday in support of the Palestinian people. More demonstrations are expected tomorrow in support of the Israeli people, marking 2 years since the attacks that started the war. Well, this is now the 6th day of the U.S. government shutdown. And as of this morning, there's no end in sight. Republican lawmakers are still trying to pass a short-term spending bill to return federal funding to where it was. But Democrats have now voted down the funding bill 4 times as they demand subsidies to help people afford health insurance be extended permanently. At this point, congressional leaders on both sides insist they have the upper hand and blame the other side for the shutdown. But in the meantime, pay has been suspended for roughly 2 million federal workers. About 750,000 have been told not to come into work. Others, like troops and air traffic controllers, are required to work without getting paid right away. The White House is still threatening to permanently fire federal workers as well, something 2 labor unions have already sued over. The last time the federal government shut down, it took more than a month to reopen. In that time, there was a lot of fallout, including flight delays and missed paychecks, that put more pressure on lawmakers and President Trump to make a deal. It's unclear what could inspire a deal this time, so stay tuned. The Trump administration is determined to move ahead with its crime crackdown, even in the face of multiple legal setbacks. First, over the weekend, a judge stopped the federal government from sending Oregon National Guard troops into Portland. The judge agreed with the state, saying it has a right to control its own National Guard unless federal intervention is needed to stop an invasion or rebellion. The judge said neither of those things are happening in Portland right now. So with that, the state's guard is staying put. Then the Trump administration decided to send California's National Guard to Oregon instead. The Guard members had already been federalized for duty around Los Angeles. And over the last couple of days, they started arriving in Oregon, apparently without any notice to state officials. So the governors of both Oregon and California sued. And with that, the judge blocked that plan as well. But the Trump administration is still saying Portland needs backup in the face of what it calls violent unrest led by domestic terrorists, and that the National Guard is needed to protect federal personnel like immigration officers and protecting federal property. Now, to give some background, protests in Portland have been happening for months over ICE agents arresting undocumented immigrants as they appeared for court hearings. But those protests have focused on a single ICE facility and are contained to a single block. So they're a far cry from the sometimes violent protests that hit Portland back in the year 2020. Also, over the weekend, President Trump ordered hundreds of National Guard troops to Illinois over the objections of that state's governor. And the state is now gearing up for its own court battle. Remember, there are also National Guard troops deployed in Memphis, Tennessee, but that deployment happened with the agreement of Tennessee's Republican governor. So President Trump doesn't face any resistance there. Last night, the Republican governor in Texas said he'd let President Trump call up hundreds of members of the Texas National Guard as needed. Stay tuned. President Trump's immigration crackdown got another win from the U.S. Supreme Court. The High Court's latest order says the Trump administration can go ahead and remove deportation protections from more than 300,000 Venezuelan immigrants living in the U.S. now. They had been allowed to live and work here under a program known as temporary protected status ever since 2021. Well, now the U.S. Supreme Court says the Venezuelans can lose their status. The justices did not give any reasoning for the decision, but we know all 6 more conservative justices allowed it, while the 3 more liberal justices objected. Either way, this won't impact all Venezuelan migrants right away, since other legal challenges continue in lower courts. The Trump administration has also moved to take away temporary protection status from some migrants from Haiti, Nicaragua, Honduras, Afghanistan, and elsewhere. The Supreme Court has had a busy summer recess full of emergency requests, but now it's time for the High Court to start its actual session, where more long-term precedent-setting decisions are made. And this is set to be another pretty significant one. Cases involve President Trump's tariffs, using race for redistricting, gun rights, conversion therapy for minors, and more. Plus, they could still decide to take up Trump's effort to end birthright citizenship and other hot-button cases. So the new term begins today and will last through June of next year. We have more news for you still ahead. But first, this episode is brought to you by Quince. When the weather cools down, I start thinking about the clothes in my closet that feel cozy and polished. And that's why I love Quince. From their $50 Mongolian cashmere sweaters to their washable silk tops and perfectly tailored coats, I love the options and the prices. I still wear my wool sweater and washable silk tank from last year, and right now I'm eyeing some of their jeans for fall. They've got that clean, classic look that goes with everything. And their wool coats for winter, I'm looking at those as well. They look designer level, but cost a fraction of the price. So how do they do it? Quince works directly with top-tier ethical factories and cuts out the middlemen, so you get luxury quality at half the price of similar brands. And it's not just clothing. Their bedding, home goods, and luggage are all top-notch. In fact, I just used my Quince carry-on over the weekend, and I was loving the smooth wheels, convenient compression straps, and stylish look. Quince is truly a one-stop shop for quality essentials. So keep it classic and cozy this fall with long-lasting staples from Quince. Go to quince.com/newsworthy for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/newsworthy. Now, back to the news. President Trump spent part of the weekend celebrating the U.S. Navy, which turned 250 years old. The president gave a speech that, by his own admission, sounded more like a campaign event than a military salute, or as he put it, quote, "Let's face it, this is a rally." Trump criticized his political opponents, especially Democrats, blaming them for the shutdown that's left sailors without pay. And he promised across-the-board pay raises for all U.S. service members on his watch. He also spoke about his $1 trillion investment in military resources. On top of the speech, Trump watched a military demonstration where Navy destroyers launched missiles and fired shells into the Atlantic Ocean. Navy SEALs descended from helicopters and fighter jets launched off the USS George H.W. Bush. There are more birthday celebrations happening in Philadelphia later this month, and this year the U.S. Postal Service released special stamps celebrating the anniversaries of the U.S. Navy, Army, and Marine Corps. Hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs has been sentenced to more than 4 years in prison. Remember, he was convicted for flying prostitutes all around the country for the drug-fueled sex performances he called freak-offs. But Combs was found not guilty of racketeering charges that could have put him in prison for life. At a sentencing on Friday, Combs addressed the judge, begged for mercy, and apologized, saying his behavior was, quote, disgusting, shameful, and sick. During the nearly 2-month trial earlier this year, a jury heard from women who said Combs beat, threatened, sexually assaulted, and blackmailed them. And on Friday, the judge focused on that violence and exploitation, saying it must be met with real accountability. But now Combs' lawyers plan to appeal the sentence, saying their client was sentenced for something he wasn't found guilty of. They also say Combs is a changed man. To be continued. A former NFL quarterback who's now a Fox Sports analyst was stabbed over the weekend, and then as he was in the hospital, he was arrested. Mark Sanchez was in Indianapolis to call the Raiders-Colts game over the weekend, but the day before, authorities say he got into a fight with a 69-year-old delivery driver outside of a pub. It escalated to a point that the driver said he considered it a life-or-death situation and that he used a knife in self-defense. Detectives have seen security footage of the whole incident, and prosecutors charged Sanchez with battery, public intoxication, and more. But Sanchez told police he doesn't remember what happened. He has his first court hearing scheduled for tomorrow. McDonald's is bringing back one of its most iconic promotions, the Monopoly game. For the first time in nearly a decade, customers can collect game pieces for a chance to win everything from free food to a new car to $1 million in cash. This time around, McDonald's is mixing old school and new school with those peel-off stickers back on some menu items and a digital version through the McDonald's app. The company says the revamped game has new security safeguards and independent audits. That's notable after the infamous early 2000s scandal where insiders rigged the game and stole nearly $24 million in prizes. You might remember it was detailed in HBO's McMillions. The new McDonald's Monopoly officially launches today and runs through November 2nd, though the game pieces can be played through November 23rd. A brighter than usual full moon is set to light up the sky tonight. It's the first supermoon of the year. That's when the moon is full and swings closest to Earth in its orbit, so it makes it look to be about 14% larger and 30% brighter than a typical full moon. And for us in the Northern Hemisphere, this one's also called the harvest moon. That's the full moon that's closest to the beginning of fall. As for tonight, experts say the best time to watch is just after sunset or around moonrise when it sits on the horizon. Of course, the farther you are from city lights and bad weather, the better your view will be. And really, if you miss it tonight, don't worry, there are 2 more supermoons later this year, one in November and one in December. That's it for the main news, so now it's time for Money Monday, when we talk about one interesting money-related news story. But first, this episode is brought to you by Fatty 15. I'm always looking for simple, science-backed ways to take care of my health as I get older, and one product that's really stood out is Fatty 15. It's the first essential fatty acid discovered in more than 90 years, called C15, and it's been described as a breakthrough in longevity and cellular health. Fatty 15's co-founder, Dr. Stephanie Van Watson, discovered its benefits while working with the U.S. Navy to improve the health of aging dolphins, and the results apparently translated to humans too. Basically, C15 strengthens our cells from the inside out, and when our cells stay strong, we age slower and feel better. It's also a clean, vegan, science-backed alternative to fish oil with no strange aftertaste, which is one of the things I appreciate most about Fatty 15. Many customers report better sleep, smoother joints, healthier liver and heart function, and more energy in as little as 16 weeks. It even comes in a beautiful, reusable glass jar, and refills arrive right to your door. Fatty 15 is on a mission to optimize your C15 levels to help you live healthier, longer. You can get an additional 15% off their 90-day subscription starter kit by going to fatty15.com/newsworthy and using the code newsworthy at checkout. Now, back to Money Monday. Energy prices are surging again, and it's hitting households hard. Electricity rates across the U.S. have jumped more than 30% since 2020 and have gone up at nearly double the rate of inflation over the past year. Experts say it's because of several different things: higher fuel costs, a strained power grid, growing demand from data centers and electric vehicles, inflation, tariffs, and years of underinvestment in new transmission lines. Utilities are passing those costs on to customers who are now paying some of the highest power bills in decades. Energy analysts say those rates aren't expected to drop anytime soon. Though, on the bright side, some reports say the big picture trends are actually working to help Americans spend less on energy eventually and lower the impact on the environment. But for now, at least, Americans are feeling the impact, and energy costs are shaping up to be one of the biggest issues heading into next year's elections. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and for your support of the show. We'll be back with even more news to know tomorrow. For now, have a great day.